um, as you guys can see, you guys might be asking, wait, let me restart. Okay. This person who you see, you guys might ask yourselves, is she wearing a cosplay or a costume? But what if I told you guys that this was a fashion subculture with deep-rooted history originating from Japan that many people all over the world use to express themselves and express their femininity? Now, you guys might be wondering what this fashion subculture has to do with me. Well, today we want to inform you all about this fashion subculture just to give it greater exposure and give you all other ways and forms of expression that you guys could use in the near future to express yourselves. My partner and I have spent several weeks researching and educating ourselves and expanding our knowledge on this fashion subculture to inform you all about it. Today we will be informing you all about the fashion subculture Lolita fashion. Specifically, we will all be informing you about its history and origins, elements and inspiration, challenges and controversies, as well as the communities and the media.
It's the other arrow.
First, I'll be talking about the history and origins of Lolita fashion and where it mainly stemmed from. Lolita fashion mainly stemmed in Japan in the late 2000s, stemming from the kawaii movement that was so popular in the 1990s. It mostly comes from Harajuku in Japan, and it mostly stems from these two areas. Lolita fashion comes in two different main categories I want to talk about, which is Sweet Lolita and Classic Lolita. Sweet Lolita is characterized with bright pastel colors, mainly using colors of mint, blue, and pink, with Classic Lolita using more muted tones like brown. These two both symbolize something akin to innocence and softness, making a distinct identity that is specific to Lolita fashion. The style mainly stemmed from Victorian inspired fashion, which was Lolita fashion was reshaped into a visual statement of innocence and emotional expression that most don't really see from something like just as a fashion. According to Sarabia and Miyatake and Okuda in 2022, Lolita's data points are gathered towards the highest left, indicating that most Lolita images have very high values and almost to 1, and very low saturation towards 0. This basically means that in the majority of Lolita images, it has high values with high pastel colors and high levels of brightness.
As you can see from these images up here, specifically the parasol one, we can see that Lolita fashion tends to have it's a very detailed fashion sense with many things making it up. Today I'll be talking about the elements that make up Lolita fashion and what makes it unique. These elements tend to be very feminine because the Lolita fashion subculture tends to be expressing femininity in different forms. So some elements that you'll see Lolitas use in their day-to-day outfits will be petticoats, which are used to add volume to their skirts, and they'll also use balloon sleeve blouses as well as darling accessories like parasols. Now I'll be speaking about variations of Lolitas. Some of these variations include Sweet Lolitas, Classic, and Gothic Lolitas. As Felina mentioned previously, there can be different kinds. Sweet Lolitas tend to focus on pastels and ruffles, whereas Gothic Lolitas, according to Heringer in 2018, they stated that Gothic Lolitas can lead towards steampunk styles. They also add dark hues like purple or dark green, which showcase their femininity, however, with a rebellious touch.
Besides the specific elements that highlight Lolita fashion, I want to highlight the challenges and controversies that cloud the Lolita fashion name. In regards to the challenges and controversies, I want to talk about the misconception behind the name Lolita fashion and also the social stigma that clouds it. Now, the word Lolita is very similar to another a somewhat known word in Japan known as lolicon, which is the attraction to younger people. I don't want to go into that area because it is a bit weird, but as though it both stemmed at the same time, that misconception of how it is with its clothing, like style in general, it gets kind of mixed up. According to King and Cassidy in 2015, while there's some who would argue that the origin of Lolita fashion can be traced back to fiction and sexual attractiveness, this style was developed way as a subcultural identity. Now, I want to name a second challenge and controversy that clouds Lolita fashion, which is British Lolitas and the social stigma behind it. Interviewee in the UK named how wearing Lolita fashion in Britain would cause a disdain, with parents not wanting their daughters to dress as such, and overall having a weird taste.
Ella Felina has spoke about the controversies and challenges that Lolita communities have faced. I will be talking about the communities and media and how they play a part in the fashion subculture. Due to Lolita and its controversial past and history, the community tends to focus on educating the people involved and the people who are becoming Lolitas, because much false information is spread all over the internet. So, according to Bernal in 2016, many of those involved with the subculture, particularly Gothic Lolitas, are riled by these frameworks and therefore find it necessary to rebel against a presupposed position of vulnerability and culpability by endeavoring to mold and control their own images and reputations. As an extra measure, they find it necessary to inform their peers about the movements, rules, and regulations and intentions and acceptable standards of dress and behavior in order to combat any insider misjudgment as well as to combat any insider misjudgment as well. It is extremely important to Lolitas to educate and stop the false spread of misinformation. However, although this information tends to be on online communities, they also have physical communities. Within these physical communities, they tend to have tea parties, as we can see here. They also tend to go to vineyards or pumpkin patches, just like basic outings you would do with your friends, however, with a group of other Lolitas, to create a unify the community. However, although physical communities are important, the media also plays a big part in these communities. Like I mentioned previously, educating the peers and communities is extremely important. However, the media also can be very beneficial. Take for example, the media and other social networking facilities like blogs or social media have been able to create online communities internationally, all over the world, for Lolitas to meet up and create physical communities or just connect online. However, there's also a harmful side to the media aspect of this community. The media tends to objectify women, they foster sex crimes, and just create a very negative and sexual environment around women and Lolitas, which is why, again, we go back to how Lolitas' main priority is to educate their communities and stop the false spread of information, because it ultimately ends up hurting women, Lolitas, and women's self-confidence. Overall, although the media can be harmful in spreading false information and creating these negative perspectives on the community, it can also be very beneficial overall because it's able to connect people internationally.
In this speech, my partner and I have informed you about Lolita fashion. A subculture that expands just not enough. And that extends past just a clothing style. We covered the history and origins of Lolita fashion, the controversies and challenges that it covers, and the characters and challenges and controversies and the communities and media. So the reason for you to remember. The next time you see someone in Victorian-inspired clothing, just remember that they are not just for fashion, but also as a means to represent themselves and express themselves. Thank you.